My name is Bonang Mohale, the former CEO of Business Leadership South Africa. It breaks my heart that I could not be there with you in person. And I know I'm the one that has probably lost out, because the value, the utility is in the engagement, interaction, and interface in questions and answers. So I will remain with my poverty of thoughts and collective thought processes. Be that as it may, I really just wanted to talk to you honestly and openly from the centerpiece of the bottom of my heart, that we are meeting this morning at a time when so many of us dare to hope that joy and peace will prevail. At a time that our country has seen unprecedented levels of gender-based violence and femicide on the one side, and on the one hand, they've also seen incredible levels of xenophobia, where black-on-black violence, where anybody that is an illegal immigrant somehow has a black face. But also at a time when the competition is no longer between one media house to another, but between the truth and fake news. Those that choose to be on the side of angels and those that choose to dance with the devil. My grandmother used to say, when you choose to dance with the devil does not change. But also at a time when those people that have nothing or very little are the ones that are most prepared to share. If I was in the room with you, I would have probably touched on three things. Number one, what then is the role of business? Number two, what is it that we can do to move this country forward? Lastly, a little bit of context. So maybe let me start with a little bit of context. There is no doubt that all of us have not collectively, individually, and severally succeeded in eradicating the legacy of apartheid. And the proof points are around all of us to see where poverty still has predominantly a black and feminine face. At the time when the economy is on its knees, black graduates are roaming the streets hopelessly, where inequality is widening, but also racism is increasing. At the time that public schooling has collapsed, but also public health care continue to fail the poor and the vulnerable. At the time that crucial infrastructure is lying in decay. And then lastly, the one that keeps me awake at night, where lawlessness has now become an epidemic. We learned in Economics 101 that the purpose of business is to maximize shareholder value. Let me submit to you that one of the key challenges confronting boards today is to ensure that corporate decision-making is consistent not only with the whims of the shareholders, but incorporates a broader stakeholder community, but also the commitments made by the executives. Therefore, in that environment, in the 21st century, the number one purpose of business is to survive. Because if you can survive, you'll make money until it comes out of your ears. Number two is to ensure that we deliver this notion called shared value. You see, business cannot continue to be an island of prosperity in a sea of poverty, because we know that when business does well, society generally does well. We also need to accept that the role of business is to do no harm, to ensure that our employees come to work every morning and they go back every afternoon with 10 fingers on their two hands, absolutely complete. It is the job of business to ensure health, safety, security, and the environment of our own employees. But secondly, to ensure that we do no harm to the society in which we are located, the community of which we are a part, but most importantly, to ensure that we do no harm to the environment, because we know that this earth we have not so much inherited from our forebears as we borrowed it from our children. Therefore, it behooves us to live it in a manner that is substantially better than we found it in. But the other role of business is also to ensure that doing no harm is quite passive. Let's do something active. Let's make the world a better place. Business has disproportionate resources, has a disproportionate voice. Business can ensure that it contributes positively towards making this world a better place. And then lastly, I think business needs to grow its own timber. It can't just depend on government to give it the resources that it needs. It must invest in this notion of creating our own future labor force. Let me conclude then by saying, if I had time, without any degree of granularity, what do I propose to be the role of business in the 21st century at the time that our country is in a spot of bother? Number one, I think business must lead in ensuring land reform, not just expropriation without compensation. Because in land reform, there's land restitution, land redistribution, and land development. Number two, business must lead in ensuring that business and indeed South Africa is adequately transformed. Because if business is transformed, South Africa will be transformed. We employ 13.5 million people. Government employs 1.3 million people directly. In all spheres of government, indirectly, maybe 2.3 million people. In fact, the government employee pension fund has only 1.7 million people. So you can see that the onus is on business to drive transformation so that we are broadly reflective of the demographics. We are not an outpost of Europe. Number three, we need to lead in ensuring that we get ourselves out of this fiscal crisis, because President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa wants to do all the right thing, but the past immediate regime, and that's what it is, it's a regime, they've stolen all the money. The fourth thing that business needs to lead on is to ensure that it leads on economic growth, GDP growth I'm talking about. Because if the economy is not growing, we're not increasing the size of the pie, very soon we'll be talking about the redistribution of poverty, not the redistribution of wealth. The last two, business needs to lead in ensuring that we keep the few jobs that we have. Because in South Africa, each one of our employees is looking after no less than 5 other dependents. With already 58.78 million South Africans, if you round it upwards, 59 million South Africans, 51% is female, we know that only 16 million are gainfully employed, 18 million on social security, only 7.2 million are registered for PAYE, and that only 2.3 million are responsible for more than 60% of what SARS collects. That those people that earn 1.5 million and above, there's only 105,000 of them. So you can see that the structure of our economy is not sufficient to absorb a growing middle class, and that's what we need to be able to pull the bottom half into the middle class. That's when you and I sleep better at night. But I think also business needs to lead in ensuring that we take education much more seriously than we have done in the past. It can't just be left to government. We are the only African country that became free from our colonial masters, and we did not intentionally improve the quality of our education. 1957, Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah, 10 years into democracy, was already boasting about 80% literacy rate, just 10 years into democracy. Even Gabriel Robert Mugabe, the late, in spite of all that breadbasket of the continent that used to be, is currently facing, today is boasting of 94% literacy rate of 12 million Zimbabweans. 6 million are outside of Zimbabwe, shared between South Africa and Botswana alone. Therefore, we need to ensure that education is taken much, much more seriously than we have done in the past. Not only because education is the surest way of transcending social classes, purely and simply because when one steadily burns the midnight oil, one gains access to the domain of knowledge and wisdom, the world of meaning, the world that cannot be conquered without a persistent crusade. By His grace, love and mercy, I thank you.